Today, we're digging into one of the biggest questions in modern history. How did the Second World War actually begin? We're going to unpack the complex, powerful chain of events that sent the entire world spiraling into chaos.
So seriously, how does something like a world war get started? It's never just one thing, right? It's not a single moment. It's more like this slow, incredible buildup of pressure, political, economic, ideological, that just keeps building and building until the whole system just breaks. And that's the story we're going to trace.
Our story doesn't really kick off in 1939. To get the full picture, we have to go back to the world that World War I left behind. It was an unstable place, and the seeds for the next, even bigger war were already being planted.
You see, the war to end all wars was supposed to bring a lasting peace, but it didn't. Not even close. Instead, it left Europe just reeling. And then, bam, the Great Depression hits, and it just shatters economies everywhere, leaving millions of people without jobs. In Germany, all that desperation got mixed with this deep, bitter anger over the Versailles Treaty. It was the perfect storm, really, and this is the ground where Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist Party grew.
And this number right here, 100,000, it says so much. The Versailles Treaty forced Germany's entire army down to just 100,000 men. Now, for a country that took so much pride in its military, this wasn't just a rule. It was a deep national humiliation. It was a constant reminder of their defeat, and it was something Hitler used masterfully to get people on his side. And this quote, wow, it gets right to the heart of his whole belief system. Hitler took all that anger and resentment and mixed it with this really toxic ideology. He truly believed that the German people were a superior race and that they were destined to build this huge, powerful new civilization. But to do that, he needed more land, more territory. And that meant one thing. He was going to have to start a war.
So, with this ideology as his engine, Hitler wasn't just going to sit around and talk. He started acting, and he began to tear apart the post-war rules piece by piece, creating a really clear pattern of aggression.
And just look how fast it all happened. By the mid-1930s, he's just openly ignoring the Versailles Treaty. He triples the size of his army and starts building a whole new air force. Then in '36, he makes a really bold move. He marches his troops straight into the Rhineland, which was supposed to be a demilitarized zone, a buffer. And then, by 1938, he pulls off the annexation of Austria. Every single step was a test, and every single time, he got away with it.
I mean, this moment right here, in the Rhineland, was a huge violation of international law. It was a massive red line. But what was the response from Britain and France? Nothing. Silence. And that silence sent a very loud and very dangerous message to Hitler. Keep pushing. Nobody's going to stop you.
So you have to ask, why didn't they do anything? Well, the policy at the time was called appeasement. You have to remember, everyone was still haunted by the unbelievable losses of World War I. So European leaders were desperate to avoid another war. They kept giving Hitler what he wanted, hoping he'd eventually be satisfied. But here's the thing about appeasement. It didn't buy peace. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. It just made him want more.
Okay, so Europe is a pressure cooker that's about to explode. But let's pause for a second, because while all of this is going on, a totally separate storm is brewing. Halfway across the world, another major power was on the move.
Right, let's shift our focus over to the Empire of Japan. They were driven by a totally different set of needs, but they were being just as aggressive, and they were already setting Asia on fire.
So what was driving Japan? Well, it was a country that was industrializing incredibly fast, but the Great Depression had basically slammed the door on global trade. And for a country with almost no natural resources of its own, that was a huge problem. To keep their factories running and become a real global power, Japan's leaders decided that conquest was the only way. And they looked right next door, at the vast resources of China. And in 1937, it just explodes into the Second Sino-Japanese War. Now, we're not talking about some small border dispute here. This was a full-scale, incredibly brutal invasion. A massive war was already raging in Asia years before things officially kicked off in Europe. And the scale of that brutality is just horrific. During the winter of 1937, in what's now known as the Nanking Massacre, the Japanese army killed an estimated 200,000 civilians and unarmed prisoners of war. It was a terrifying preview of the horrors that were still to come. Okay, let's head back to Europe. Appeasement was clearly a failure, the world was distracted, and Hitler was ready. He was about to make his final catastrophic move, the one that would officially light the fuse on the Second World War.
And this was the move that made jaws drop all across the world. In August 1939, two bitter enemies, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, signed a non-aggression pact. Think about that. This pact was basically Hitler's green light. It meant he could invade Poland and not have to worry about the Soviets attacking him from the other side. And, even crazier, they had a secret deal to literally carve up Poland between them.
So once that pact was signed, boom, the final dominoes fell, one after another, super fast. First, on September 1st, German tanks storm into Poland from the west. Britain and France tell Hitler to get out, but he just ignores them. So 2 days later, they make good on their promise to Poland and declare war on Germany. But the trap was already sprung. On September 17th, the Soviets invade from the east. Caught between two armies, Poland was crushed in weeks. The war was on.
And just like that, the world was officially at war. But, and this is kind of strange, the first few months of this huge global conflict were actually pretty deceptive.
Yeah, this is such a fascinating contrast. On the ground in Western Europe, things were so quiet that people actually started calling it the phony war. But out on the Atlantic Ocean, the war was very, very real. German U-boats were already waging a deadly campaign, sinking over 100 merchant ships in just the first 4 months. The conflict was anything but phony out there.
So let's just step back and look at the board. Poland is gone, split between Germany and the Soviets. The Soviets are also moving into the Baltic states. And all this time, that massive, brutal war in China is still raging on. So you don't have just one conflict. You've got these two enormous theaters of war blazing away at opposite ends of the globe, about to merge into one single global catastrophe.
The path to World War II was just littered with ignored warnings, with failed diplomacy, and with aggression that went completely unchecked. It's a powerful and pretty scary reminder of how fast things can fall apart. And it really leaves us with a chilling question. The world ignored all the signs once. Could something like that happen again?